Hello, my name is Ken Miller and welcome to Practical 5 of the Pet Intelligence training course. If you're following along in the notes, this practical starts on page 14. In this practical, we're going to take a further look at the edit chart screen and try and understand some of the more complex features. So I'm going to start by jumping onto my Practical 5 page and clicking the little plus button to create a brand new chart. Now this chart is two-dimensional. So it's built out of not just an x-axis, a y-axis, but also a legend. And I'll show you how to put that together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select new business or renewal. On our y-axis, we're going to select our policy count. Then in our legend, we're going to bring the product, and that will create a chart which looks something like this. The next thing we're going to do, because our numbers are really high, is we're going to apply a filter. And in this filter, what we're going to do is we're going to select our call days ago, and we're going to have that less than or equal to 10. So we just want any calls that have happened in the last 10 days. So we've now got an up-to-date chart of all of the information. What we're going to do next is we're going to go to the attributes section. And in the attributes section, we're going to click the show data values. And we're actually going to come down here and we're going to hide the legend. But basically, if I scroll down these features, I'll explain these to you in a little bit more detail. So at the top here, this first section is used when we start to drill down into data. And we're going to see that in the next practical. So for now, don't worry about that piece here. But down here, we've got show data values. And we've also got show trend line. Now, if you tick trend line, you'll get a linear regression line plotted on the chart. We've only got 2 data points on our x-axis, so it's not too useful in this chart. But what we can also do is we can decide to show or hide our x-axis label. So if we hide it, our x-axis label will disappear. Or we could even override the x-axis label. So by default, it uses the object name, so NB or renewal. I could change that to Hello World. And what you'll see is that my label on the x-axis will now change to Hello World. And what I can also do is remove that. If you have very long descriptions, say, more than 50 characters or so, you can actually limit that. So you can say, only show me the first. We'll go really small on this to show you exactly what that looks like. Only show me the first 5 characters within a description. In this case, our labels are nice and short, so that's okay. In our y-axis, we have slightly different, and these labels are context sensitive, so will change depending on the chart type. But we can hide the label, just as we did the x-axis label. So I can either hide or show policy count, or I could provide an alternative label. Now, because this axis is numeric, I can actually decide to go to different maxes or mins. So I could decide to start the chart at 0.2 on the chart. Now actually I've got some data that's in 0, so it's going to ignore me there. But if I go here on the max and say I want the chart to go up to 500, then I can set the actual absolute value. So rather than the chart deciding what the data contains and drawing itself appropriately, we can override that. And then just as with the other items, we can go into the legend. If I wanted to undo anything that I set and return it back to its default, I would click the little refresh. Now, one other thing I'm just going to point out at this point, notice these little numbers here. So on my attributes, I've got 2. That's because I've overridden 2 items. So I'm showing my data values and I'm hiding my legend item. So those are 2 things that I've applied here. Similarly, on the filters, I can see that I've got 1 filter in. So really quickly, by looking along the top here, I can see exactly what is and isn't implemented. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to apply some targets to our chart. So I'm going to click on my target section here. I'm going to click on the plus, and I'm going to say, I'm going to draw a target range from 0 to 200, and I'm going to make that a nice red color. So I click in the red, select the color, or I could type in a hexadecimal color, or pick from the standard charts that I want. What I'm going to do is apply that and create a nice little chart color on that page. So I can put target ranges, zones. If I actually made the value the same, low to high, I'd just get a target line. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a nice little zone on here. The other thing that I can control from a color point of view are the actual colors of the bars themselves. So by default, it's using our standard color palette, but I can go ahead and change that if I want to. Now, because I've got a legend item in here, it's only allowing me to change this on product. This again is case sensitive, is sensitive depending on what the chart looks like. So what I'm going to say is if this chart is equal to car insurance, then I'm going to pick a nice grey colour for it. If this chart is, so click the plus again, so if where it's equal to life insurance, I'm going to make it a slightly darker grey. And then if the product is, so use the little picker here, is pet insurance, then I'll colour it an even darker grey. So I've created like a nice little grayscale off the colours here. The final thing I'm going to do is change that chart type, change it into a stacked chart. So a nice little stacked chart there, and that will be everything that I need to do for that chart at the moment. So I'm going to call this lots of chart elements. And I'm going to save that chart type there. So I've now got that chart with lots of chart elements on it. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to split my chart cell up, and we're going to create a data table. Now this data table we're going to make to look slightly different. So I'm going to come into here and I'm going to click add again. Now this time I'll go straight to my data table, just like I did in the data table practical. I'm going to select my sales item here. I'm going to pick insurer. I'm going to go into add mode. I'm going to click whether it's a new business or a renewal product. I'm going to click my policy count. So I want policy count in there, and I also want total commission in here as well. So do that, and then I'm going to turn this into a crosstab by making insurer the top break. And what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go to my my colors section on here, and I'm going to change this. So I'm going to say if policy count is greater than, and in this case what I'm going to select is if it's greater than 10,000 or 1,000, then I'm going to colour that yellow. So I'm going to pick a little yellow colour there, click on the yellow, so that'll highlight my large policy counts. Then I'm also on my total commission, I'm going to highlight this, and where total commission amount is greater than 5,000, I'm going to colour this red this time. So I'm going to pick a red colour and highlight those in red. I'm going to call that crosstab with highlights. And I'm going to save that. Now the final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this chart, and I'm going to make it a parent chart. Now if you remember all the way back to practical 1, we had a data table in the top here. If I selected the item, it filtered everything else on the chart page. I'm just going to show you how to do that in here as well. So if I jump back to practical 5, I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit this chart. This time I'm going to use the chart items. So this sets the overall settings of the chart, and in here I can define that as a parent chart. When I'm happy with that, I'll click save. I'll get one of those little icons in here telling me it's a parent chart, and if I now select new business or renewal, in this chart my chart on the right hand side will also update and filter, and I can select any of these sections or click the undo button and take that filter off. Okay, thank you. That was practical 5. I look forward to you joining us for practical 6.